Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Adam Lang. We all know that a company's culture comes from the top, but when you've got the wrong culture, how do you actually go about changing it? How do you change that mindset and develop the high-performance culture needed for success? Increasingly, businesses of all sizes are drawing on outside help, somebody who can look objectively at the situation and the people involved. Business coaching is not so different to coaching a sporting team. Gerard Murphy is the founder of Performance by Design, a company he developed with AFL legend Paul Roos. Gerard, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be with you.
There may be a presumption that if somebody has proven themselves and made it to the top of a business, then they should know what they're doing. Why would they engage a business coach?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the problems with the way we generally appoint leaders is we appoint them on their technical expertise. So because somebody's good at their job, they often rise through the ranks and they get earmarked for leadership early. But often we don't spend enough time developing the leadership component or the human side of the leader. And so as a result of that, we can often end up with really highly technical, competent people that have got gaps around how do they lead humans, how do they make people better, how do they ask for help. And so it's really important to have someone independent, I think, that can sort of sit back and say, hey, have you thought about what would you do if there may be another way to do this? And if we continue to ask these questions, then you end up in a growth mindset where people are improving, constantly learning. And if we are to be great leaders, we have to be able to demonstrate the sorts of things to the people we're leading that we want them to display. So if I want my team to grow and to learn and to have a growth mindset, to ask for help, well then as a leader, I must be doing that myself. So there's a million different reasons why you might engage a business coach, but fundamentally, I think if you think that you've got no gaps in your leadership, well then you probably shouldn't be a leader.
So is it the case that just because you've led a team, it doesn't mean you can lead any team?
Oh, absolutely, because every team's different. Like one of the great things about my job is I walk in every day to a different team and you never really know what you're going to get. It's amazing that you can have 7 people in a room on 5 different days of the week and you'll have completely different dynamics, completely different outcomes coming from those groups of people. And that's based on the leadership, the composition of the team, the relationships between the people in the team. So success with one group doesn't necessarily correlate to success with another group. So absolutely correct there.
Okay, so let's go from one team to another. There's differences, as you've spoken about. What are some of the common blind spots of leaders that you see?
Again, mate, it's a really difficult question because we do a lot of work in psychometric profiling, and so blind spots will vary from leader to leader. I think the common failings of leaders tends to be that under pressure, we tend to think that we have to have the answers, and we need to be able to demonstrate that we know, and it is so difficult for one person to actually be able to come up with every answer. So I think really important that leaders understand that you don't have to have all the answers. Your people are looking to you for support, but they don't need you to have the answer to every problem. The second thing is make sure that you, in the moments when you need to trust the most, is often the times when leaders step in to try and take control. Because in those high pressure moments when you really need to trust your team and demonstrate that you trust them, there's the tendency to take back that trust and actually try to take control of the situation because it's quite frightening. As you know, we spend a lot of time in sport. And so in the moment in the game when the coach needs to trust the players the most is at its highest pressure, that's when you have to hand it over. And as a leader, sometimes people will let you down, or sometimes the players or the team will let you down, but that's just another opportunity to learn. And I think not focusing in too much on the micromanagement, taking control, having to know everything is really important in those moments. And probably the other point that I'd make is that in our quest to become the best we can be, we can focus in on the negatives. And so as a result of that, we're always looking to be, how can we improve? How can we improve? How can we improve? But the truth of it is most people are doing most things right most of the time. So flipping that over and saying, okay, let's keep rewarding what we're doing well and then look for the areas of growth is a much better way than continually looking for how can we get better, how can we get better, how can we get better? Because if we do that, then it can become quite a negative environment. So there's many blind spots and they're all exacerbated by pressure, but I guess there's some of the common themes that come out.
I think they're incredibly relatable. It's quite clear that you've got significant passion for what you do. Can you talk me through the history of performance by design?
Yeah, I've been working in this space, particularly in professional sport and the corporate sector, for 20 years. So I've worked at Geelong Football Club, Richmond Football Club, Port Adelaide Football Club. I went overseas and lived in London and worked over there with the England rugby team, England Rugby League team, the EPL football with West Ham and the GB Olympic team. We've also spent a lot of time working with, some quite big multinational companies such as Caterpillar, Nissan, and then lots of ranges of companies in between, whether they're family companies that work in a local region or the national companies. So quite a long and extensive range of experience. Performance by Design itself came about. Paul Roos is my business partner. Paul and I met each other when he was at Sydney. We stayed in contact. I sold out of a previous business, and so I was working on my own. And about 3 years ago, Paul and myself and two other guys, and one's a tech, Warren's a tech guy, we came together and decided to build a company that was focused on leadership culture, team alignment, coaching, but with a technical component as well. So we've spent a fair bit of time and a lot of money developing technology around supporting the work that we do face-to-face.
Stay with me, Gerard. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Gerard Murphy, founder of Performance by Design. Obviously, you've got significant experience, different countries, variety of fields, sporting and corporate. Where have you seen business coaching work really well? And to the extent that you're able, can you give us an example from your own experience?
Where it works well is when people have a good relationship. So my perspective as a coach is that I have to like the person I'm working with. We don't have to be best friends, but we have to respect each other, because if I don't respect you as a person or a leader, then it's very difficult for me to have a meaningful relationship and therefore provide the level of service and the level of commitment that you would want and expect, and vice versa. So for me, I don't do coaching 5 days a week. For me, it's far more about selecting leaders who I believe are committed to a values-based leadership, and I like and they like me. And then as a result of that relationship, what we tend to do is have really interesting conversations where we talk about what's going on in the workplace with their teams, in their lives, so that they can maintain a level of well-being for themselves and for their teams and their companies that allows them to get the most out of their team. Examples, leaders that have started at a national level, gone into a sort of Asia-Pacific level, and then gone on to executives of global teams. And to be honest, mate, the truth about coaching is it's the same advice you're giving to people at that level as you are to a local company in the Melbourne region. It's just a different context. But the problems around how do we get the best out of our people are generally, not dissimilar.
I'm sure that's right, that the concepts that are applicable to sport of any grade and companies of any size, they tend to be the same because they're very human. Is that right?
100%. You've always got people who care deeply about the team. You've always got super talented people that care deeply about the team. You've always got talented dickheads. And so you have to sort of work your way through, where does the weighted numbers sit? Is it clear what's acceptable or not in this organisation? If it's not, let's get clear about it. And then how do we build good relationships so we can have honest conversations? It's a process. It takes time because relationships take time. And you have to work through it. And you need leaders that commit it, because to be a good leader, you have to be committed to the process. It isn't a part-time job, it's 24/7 to be the CEO or the leader of a company, because you wake up in the middle of the night and I'll guarantee you're thinking about what happened yesterday or what happened last week or what's happening tomorrow or the meeting that's coming up and how are we going to get the best out of our people. So it's a full-time job, and you have to be totally committed to what you're doing, because if you're not, your people see it, and that ultimately comes out in performance.
And what are the ingredients that can contribute when it doesn't work?
You probably haven't got clarity around what's acceptable or not. And if you haven't got clarity, then you're leaving your culture to chance. So therefore, you have to get absolute clarity around what behaviours are acceptable in this organisation. Then you have to go about rewarding and challenging when it is right or when it's not right. And then you have to spend a lot of time building relationships, and we're all busy, Adam. So as you know, when you're busy, the first thing that goes out the window is the taking time to build relationships with the people that you most need to have good relationships with. Like, we spend more time at work than we do at home. And so why wouldn't we build in systems into our daily routine that are going to help develop better relationships with the people we work with? So having those clear expectations, following through on those, and then building good relationships, so in order to have honest conversations with each other about our performance, because we're there to do the best we can, to enjoy ourselves, to have a good time, to love the people we're with, and to get to the end point together. Like, I think that's why I love team. Team's fantastic, because anyone can go and do something on their own, and they may or may not be successful, but I love it when you get a group of people working well together. Like, there's nothing like it. And everyone who's been a part of a really successful team, they absolutely know what it feels like and what it's like, and want to get back to that space.
So in summary, would you say it's being accountable, it's being committed, and caring enough to communicate about it?
Yeah, it's good. That's a great summary. I might use that. Thanks for that. Yeah, 100%. Like, but the thing, mate, too, is that there's more books written on leadership than any other topic, I think. And so people try to simplify leadership and creating great teams to these, here's the 5 best steps to the world-class team and all that. Like, if it was that simple, everyone would be doing it, you know what I mean? Like, the truth about it is you have to look at the leader, you have to look at the team they've got around them, the environment they're working in, and then be able to adapt to put in place the steps for the group to develop. That's the fun of it, if you know what I mean. So going in and just saying, oh yeah, here's the 7 steps, bang, we're going to make you a great team. Like, to be frank, that's a lot of shit. The truth about it is that we have to be able to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to have to stick at it. And I love your accountability. I mean, Jim Collins talks about discipline all the time. And so discipline or accountability, you cannot have good leaders or good teams without accountability or discipline and commitment. So, yeah, I'm going to use your 3 words. That's good.
Go right ahead. We mentioned earlier that business coaching isn't too different from coaching a sporting team. Can you sort of specify some of the similarities that you've seen?
Yeah, they're similar. I think probably the massive difference between sport and business is their commitment to development of young people. So business talks a lot about developing young people, but if you look at a sporting team, so for example, if you looked at the AFL prior to the salary cuts due to COVID, I guess, but you would have sort of 10 or 12 coaches for 40 young men. The commitment to development around the talent in the group is phenomenal. And I think that's one of the significant differences. The other significant difference is the commitment to review. Business doesn't review well enough, I don't think.
Okay.
We move on too quickly. We go on to the next thing. So in a sporting team, the coaches will review the game on the Sunday or the Monday. Then they'll bring the team in and the team will review the game together. Then they'll break into their backs and forwards and they'll review the game, and then they'll go to individuals. So by the time you get to Wednesday, every player has been through a significant review process on how we can get better and what we need to do to improve the performance of the team. And that's even in the teams that aren't performing that well. So the commitment to development and the commitment to review and improve performance is probably the most significant difference. And that's driven by the media. So I always say to my corporate teams, imagine that this meeting is being filmed and we're going to report on it on the back page of the newspaper tomorrow morning, and we're going to put it on the news, and you'll all be analysed based on your performance in this meeting. I guarantee that most people's behaviour in that meeting would change. And that's what sports people and coaches are subjected to 24/7. They're constantly under review. So that what that does is that drives their commitment to improving performance harder and harder and harder. And that's why they're always looking for a new way, and that's why they review so hard, and that's why they develop talent. And I think business could learn a lot about review, and it could learn a lot about developing young talent.
We'll be back with more in a moment. I'm talking to Gerard Murphy, founder of Performance by Design. Speaking of review, I've personally been through a leadership coaching process before. At times, it can be very uncomfortable, including, in my case, a very candid, honest appraisal of strengths, weaknesses, character. And really, for me, the biggest insight was around how I was being perceived, not how I thought I was coming across, but how people were seeing me. Can you talk us through some of the coaching methods that you might use?
Self-awareness, Adam, is the single biggest characteristic of a good leader. Because if you're not self-aware, you can't do anything else, because you just march off down the road, and if you bothered to turn around and look behind you, there'd be no one coming. So what you have to do is you have to be open to receiving feedback, and how we gather that is really important. So one of my, I guess, pet hates around coaching is that it's done outside the context of the team that the leader is leading. So having coaches come in and coach you externally without any knowledge of the team and the team that they're leading, you're leaving yourself open for failure, in my view. Because the truth about leadership is, in order to lead, you have to have people following, and therefore understanding what they think about you and how you're being perceived is really important in terms of helping you become a better leader, or through your coaching. For me, it's about helping leaders understand what their team is asking of them, what their team thinks that they can do better, helping them set very clear values so that their behaviour is aligned and authentic to their values. I just come off a Zoom call where I was taking a brief with someone who I'm looking to coach, and it's really important to understand, what do you want to get out of coaching? Don't just wander in. Your chairman said you need to coach, so you've got to go and get someone. Don't just go and find a coach. Do a lot of background around who it is that you're potentially going to have coach you. Make sure that you are clear about what you want to get out of the coaching, and then have a really frank conversation early, because it'll save potentially a lot of heartache. And as I said at the start, make sure it's someone that you think you can develop a good relationship with, because if you don't respect that person, it'll be difficult to take their advice. And probably just pick up one point there, mate, too. If it doesn't hurt at some point, if you're not going through some reflection or some uncomfortableness, then you're probably not being coached hard enough or well enough. Because if you think about the times in your life when you've had difficult conversations from people you love the most, whether it's your kids, your partner, your parents, and they've given you feedback you didn't like, it always stings. It always stings. And it stings because it's probably true. And even if it's not true, if it makes you go away and reflect, well, that's been a good thing. One of the things I think that we do as organisations is we invest really heavily in the leader and the leaders, and that's fantastic. Don't get me wrong for a second. But what we need to do, and goes back to my point earlier around sport, is we need to invest more heavily in the leadership capacity of people who are lower in the organisation, who are coming up. Because when they get to that leadership position, their skill set will then be far greater. Because far too often we look at the executive team or the CEO, and we say, we need to give them coaching. Absolutely, you do. But also look a little bit further down and say, okay, which of these people will be leaders in the future? What can we do now to develop their leadership capacity?
That's a great point. Gerard, thanks very much for joining us on Fear and Greed this morning.
No, it's been great, Adam. Really enjoyed the conversation.
That was Gerard Murphy, founder of Performance by Design. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join Sean Aylmer every weekday morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Adam Lang. Enjoy your day.